Let us begin.
Thank you so much, choir. Our opening words this morning are from Nita Penfold, a poem called First Day of School. No matter what they tell you, let it be about joy. Let it be about the sacred, self-surviving, no, thriving, shining its way to the wisdom within. Let it be about blooming, the unfolding of the universe through you, because the story of you begins 15 billion years ago with that first flash of being. At 4, you reached your hand out into the dark night and pulled back in wonder a firefly blinking from your finger. Keep that magic, that both you and the firefly are one, everything connected, everything possible. Made of stardust and moonshine as we all are, let it always be about your shining. Our opening hymn is number 126, Come Thou Fount of Every Blessing. I invite you to rise in body or in spirit and join in singing.
Sing
I'd like to invite one of our young adults up to light our chalice this morning. You might know them as Bradford, you might know her as Megan, you might know him as Dylan. It's all good, all of the above, and we're so glad they're lighting our chalice this morning. Our words come from Maureen Killeran. In these hard times, let us look first to the response of love. In the midst of challenge, may our chalice flame bear witness to the inherent worth and dignity of every human being. In the midst of uncertainty, may our chalice be a beacon of encouragement, that our values may guide our choices. Let us look first to the response of love.
So welcome to First Parish in Bedford, a Unitarian Universalist congregation where people have been gathering for almost 300 years now to further the spirit of liberal religion. Whoever you are, whomever you love, whether you worship one God, many gods, or no God, you are welcome here. I want to give a special welcome to our visitors this morning, whether you are in person or on Zoom. We are so glad you are with us on this beautiful, albeit slightly chilly Sunday morning. Here in the sanctuary, you are invited to fill out one of the blue connection cards that you will find at the end of the pew, and you can turn it in to the usher during the offering, and we will add you to our newsletter. After the service, we hope you will stop by the welcome desk and say hello. You can sign up there as well for your name tag and to join the newsletter, and someone will be happy to answer any questions you have about the church. In Zoom, we'll put a link in the chat where you can fill out a virtual connection card. Parents and caregivers of little ones, there is a nursery available downstairs for your convenience, but of course we are always delighted to have our littlest ones here in the sanctuary with us as well. Everyone is invited to join us after the service in the common room for coffee, tea, and fellowship. On Zoom, we'll leave the space open so you can chat. We have some announcements this morning. The first announcement is not really church-related, but I just wanted to name it. You may be aware that the Indianapolis Colts are playing the New England Patriots at this exact moment in Frankfurt, Germany. I just arrived here from Indianapolis, so this is a little awkward for all of us. But I pledge to you, I will not check the score during the service even one time, and nobody tell me. We are having our semi-annual congregational meeting today, right after the service. This is my first one of these, so I am very excited. I hope you are too, and I hope you will be there, because we need your energy and we need your enthusiasm, but above all, we need a quorum. And we will start at noon, but those of you who are going to attend on Zoom, please sign in earlier so the tech folks can check your membership status. Sarah Dorr and Stacy Katz both sent out the Zoom link, so look for their emails Thursday and Friday. Sarah also sent out a copy of the warrant and the unapproved June minutes. And next Tuesday, every second Tuesday, in the place of our usual Tuesday night meditation, we will be having a Vespers service led by Reverend Annie and Randy Courier. So you can expect moments of silence, some singing, lighting candles, a story, a poem, a reading. It is intended to be a comforting and meditative space to come together in these overwhelming times and just be with each other. So 7 p.m. in the Bacon Room and on Zoom, again, every second Tuesday, all are welcome. And finally, the memorial service for Rich Razumny will be at 3:30 today in the sanctuary, led by Reverend Annie. You can also join on Zoom. Please hold the family in your heart as we send our love and support as a community to Leah and to their family during this sad time. And those are our announcements, so if you will please rise again, we will share our unison affirmation, which is also in your order of service. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. El amor es el espíritu de esta iglesia y el servicio es su ley. Este es nuestro gran pacto. Vivir juntos en paz, buscar la verdad en espíritu de amor y ayudarnos los unos a los otros.
Good morning. Good morning. Okay, this is going to be a game today. What's this? Okay. Does anybody know what this is? Maybe if you had a toddler around you recently? Like a toddler teething toy? They start to understand physics a little bit? How about this? What do all three of these things have in common? Keep your hands busy. Yeah. Do you know what somebody asked me about, I don't know, the second week of September, was if Jamie was going to mind if they knitted during worship. And I said, well, you know, I haven't asked him specifically, but I'm pretty sure he's going to be okay with it. And here's an interesting thing, too. Now, I've been a DRE for 16 years now, and I first started DREing. Fidgets were a really new thing that we had in classrooms. The idea that you would give a whole bunch of stuff to a kid in a class was kind of an odd idea. That was 16 years ago. I'm old now. But so for those of you who are younger, can you remember a time where, you know, when I say younger, I mean those of you who are like 18 and younger. Do you, or even like 20 and younger? 20 and younger, Brad. All right. Can you remember a time where these kinds of items were not allowed in your class? All right. For those of you who are younger, please raise your hand. If you're under 20, raise your hand if you remember a time that you couldn't have something to use your hands with in class. You do. But how long ago is that you remember that not being a normal thing?
Started when I was like a junior in high school.
Yeah. So it's kind of new that it's a little bit more accepted, isn't it? Yeah. It's relatively new. But how long has anybody been knitting in worship? 1,000 years, probably, yeah? You know, it used to be very common, actually, back, 19th century for women to quilt when they went to church, for them to stitch samplers when they were at church. The men, you're fresh out of luck on that one, sorry. You just had to apparently sit there and be bored. But now, the thing is, though, is that more and more over time, it's becoming much more a normal part of our life, that we just can have something that we keep busy. And I gotta tell you, like my favorite one is a binder clip. I love playing with a binder clip. You're in a meeting with me, you've probably seen me have a binder clip in my hands. So it's just what I like to do. So just curious, who has their own personal favorite fidget? What do you like to do? Bradford.
I like to make bracelets, like string embroidery clasp bracelets.
Awesome. I saw a hand up over here.
I have a ring.
A ring, oh, that's a good one too. Those fidget rings. Has anybody else been wanting one of those fidget rings? Because I see them all the time out there. Who else has? What do you like to do with your hands?
Online solitaire.
Online solitaire. So that's actually a good one too. I have listened to lectures. When I was in grad school, I would record lectures and then I would listen to them, and I used to play Minesweeper because it would quiet the monkey part of my brain. I just wanted to chitter chatter away in my brain, and I could focus on that. So that's another one. It's not just sometimes you got to keep your hands busy. Sometimes you got to keep a little part of your brain. Anybody over here have a favorite one? Mark? Mala beads. Yeah, that's a good one. Greta? Pens. Oh, you like to, fidget with the pen caps and stuff? That's a classic one. Who else has always been with pen caps and eraser caps all the time? Yeah. So this is the thing, we all do this, and honestly, I don't think we talk about it enough. Sometimes we feel like we have to hide the fact that we're doing our fidget, like we have to hide the fact that we're doing solitaire down here so that nobody judges us, or we have to hide the fact that we need to keep our hands busy. And I'm here to tell you, You don't. So the same answer to the person who asked me in September, do you think Reverend Jamie's going to mind if I knit during the worship service? And the answer was no, he is not going to mind. You got to do what you got to do so you can be present, so you can be there. And I think it's a beautiful thing that we're becoming more aware as a community and society that letting somebody do what they need to do without shame and without judgment and not having to know why they're doing it just makes our spaces that much more enjoyable because it gives everybody a new way to be present and engaged in a way that's comfortable for them. And that's a win-win for me all the time. So fidget away. Bring your favorite fidgets. And so if you didn't know, bring your knitting, bring your solitaire game, bring your pen caps, bring your mala beads, okay? Please do that and be present with us. And we honor that in you. I now invite our pre-K to 8th graders to head up to the Overlook Room. It's our second week with our new blessing that we will send off with, and so please join in singing the children's blessing. You'll find it in your order of service.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Lori Groves. I'm a member of the Lay Pastoral Care Team, and this, as you know, is our favorite time where we invite you up to share any joys or concerns that you are experiencing right now. We ask that you please be focused and be brief. And I'd like to light one more candle for all the joys and concerns that we keep in our hearts. And I would like to let you know that I'll be at the candle stand after the service for anyone who would like to light a candle of joy or concern in private.
Our joys and sorrows are larger than this space and this congregation. They extend to our community and to our world. And I know, as we just heard, many people are deeply affected by the violence in Israel and Palestine, and I wanted to offer some words today. This is a difficult time to minister in. One sign of that is that I keep changing the hymns at the last minute as my feeling of what I need to say changes between Friday when the bulletins are printed and Sunday when it's time to speak, which is to say there will be a change in our meditation hymn today. It will not be number 128 like it says in the order of service. Brad and Steve have been very gracious about this. Before I share my thoughts for this pastoral reflection, I want to remind you of the basic arrangement that we have between minister and congregation here in Unitarian Universalist congregations. Right, as minister, I have what is called freedom of the pulpit, which means I am tasked with speaking the truth as I perceive it without fear or favor to the best of my ability. I never take that obligation lightly or forget the privilege that I am afforded by my presence at this pulpit. As congregations, you have what is called freedom of the pews, which means there's no expectation that you agree with me, but rather you are charged with discerning for yourself by the light of your own reason and the dictates of your own conscience, the merit or lack thereof of whatever I may say. And between us, hopefully there is a dialogue of mutual accountability and care. So it is in that spirit that I share a few words with you now. I did not come to First Parish as an expert on Israel and Palestine. Far from it, I confess I came here knowing maybe a little more than the average person, certainly less than anyone seriously engaged with the subject. And so in the last few weeks, I have been reading and reading and reading as much as time allows, all that I can from as many different sources and perspectives as I can, trying to get some handle on this subject. And the more I read, all that becomes certain to me is that in the bewildering complexity of this issue, I do not think that I will get a handle on this subject. There are no uncontested stories, there are no uncontested narratives, there are no uncontested analysis or judgments or conclusions, there are barely any uncontested facts. It is a heartbreakingly, tragically, bewilderingly complex issues with deeply rooted historical traumas on all sides, and that complexity can lead to a kind of moral paralysis, where things that should be simple to say become hard to say, because we don't want to say the wrong thing. We don't want to appear to be taking sides in a conflict that we barely understand. We don't want to hurt someone by accident with something that we say, and we don't want to foster still more divisiveness and conflict. But there are some things that we should still be able to say. We should be able to say unambiguously that the Hamas murders and kidnappings of October 7th were a crime and an act of terrorism that should and must be condemned. We should not treat that as something that has already been said, or doesn't need to be said, or goes without saying, because in light of 2,000 years of anti-Semitism and continued anti-Semitism and rising anti-Semitism, it needs to be said. And our Jewish friends and neighbors who are still in shock and mourning, who are fearing for the safety of the hostages and their families and their loved ones everywhere, including here in the United States, they need to hear it be said clearly, unambiguously, when we speak on this issue, that we condemn the attack of October 7th and we condemn terrorism and anti-Semitism, and the hostages must be released. We all need to hear it be said for our own moral sanity, because there is no morally sane world in which the terrorism of October 7th is acceptable. And there is more that we should be able to say. There was a CNN story that I read just yesterday morning about conditions at the Al-Shifa hospital in Gaza. Power to the neonatal unit as of Saturday morning has been lost. The incubators and all of the other systems that serve that unit have shut down. And doctors are now being forced to carry out artificial respiration on 36 babies by hand. By hand. 3 babies have died as of yesterday morning. Are we becoming numb to stories like this? In the military response to October 7th, more than 11,000 Palestinians have been killed in Gaza. 4,000 of them and more are children. And we should be able to say unambiguously that the life of a Palestinian child matters as much as the life of any child anywhere. And there is no morally sane world in which 4,000 children are killed in the space of a few weeks with no end to the death in sight, and this is considered an acceptable cost of war. One can say that Hamas bears responsibility for the use of human shields. One can say that Hamas bears responsibility for continuing to hold the hostages, which must be released. And the people of Gaza are not Hamas. The children of Gaza are not Hamas. There are millions of innocent Palestinians caught in this crossfire, so we also must say that the innocent people of Gaza must be protected from this madness by all parties to this conflict. And I remind those of us who live in the United States that we are a party to this conflict because we are supplying the weapons and we are helping pay for the violence. My prayer today is not that you agree with me on any particular point. No one agrees about anything on this terrible issue. My prayer is that we not be so paralyzed by the complexity that we lose our moral voice altogether and we silently accept the unacceptable. Jewish people need to hear unambiguously that the world will never again accept terrorism and violence against them, and the people of Gaza urgently need someone to speak for them too and say, no, they are not expendable. They're not collateral damage. Their lives have inherent worth and dignity, and they must be protected. My prayer today is that each of us find our voice and speak whatever moral truth we can lay claim to. Say the thing that is yours to say, so that history will not record that we watched this moment in silence, wrestling with the complexity of it all, unable to find any words to speak. Our meditation hymn today is number 95 in your order of service. There is more love somewhere.
It is good to be part of a community that is seeking more love, more hope, more peace. And I am so grateful for the generosity of this community that has sustained us for many years. Today we have a Share the Plate offering that was brought to the Social Responsibility Council by one of our long-term members, Dot Bergen. And this offering first came to her mind after the horrific fires that destroyed so much of Hawaii. It's for the Unitarian Universalist Association Disaster Relief Fund. And so often it feels like the world is on fire, metaphorically, but also, sadly, literally, in so many places. And so, as climate change continues to wreak havoc on our planet, we offer this opportunity to give to the Unitarian Universalist Association Disaster Relief Fund. This is what they say about this fund. With your donations, we are able to provide assistance to congregations, their members, and their communities. Disaster Relief Fund grants are designed to respond to widespread damage that has received a disaster declaration from FEMA or local government sources. Some of the expenses can include damage to congregations' buildings and relocation to temporary locations, damage to members' and friends' homes and relocation expenses, donations to partner organizations that serve the community at large, particularly those that would not be eligible for other funding. Some examples of where this money has gone in the past is to the UU Church of the Philippines that received funding to help repair Unitarian churches in parts of Negros Island and to assist members following Typhoon Rai and Typhoon Odette. To the UU Church of Bowling Green, Kentucky, that received funding to clear tree damage on their property and to help member families who were displaced following tornadoes. To the UU Fellowship of Charlotte County in Florida, who received funding to help with removing trees from their building and major roof repairs after Hurricane Ian. I invite you to give generously to this morning's offering, not only to strengthen this vital community, but to live into our interdependence with our other Unitarian Universalist communities around this country and around the world. We are only as strong as we can be together. To the people who have mistaken freedom for liberation, by Reverend Julian Soto. To be free, you must embrace the breadth of your own existence without apology. Even if they try to take it from you, you must know not that you can do whatever you want. You are not a kudzu vine eating entire hillsides for the purpose of feeding your own lush life. You must know instead that inside you are entire universes, milky blue, magenta, gold, expanding. But to be actually free, you must know and you must fight for the entire universes inside of everyone else. Being free is not a license, but a promise.
So yesterday was Veterans Day. To all the veterans here and in our community, thank you for your service. And in honor of Veterans Day, I'm happy to share something I learned in the process of researching for this sermon that I didn't know, which is that some of the first organized disability rights activists in this country were veterans returning from World War II. These were men who had served their country in wartime and returned with a variety of injuries that led to mobility challenges. Many of them were in wheelchairs. And they discovered quickly enough that the communities they were returning to were not prepared for them, were not designed for them. Public spaces in the 1940s were not generally wheelchair accessible. And many veterans found themselves on college campuses because some 8 million took advantage of the GI Bill to go to college. And those colleges were not accessible either. I learned this from an article by Julie Peterson, who was a grad student at the University of Massachusetts. You can find it at the National Museum of American History website. She writes, on the University of Illinois campus, disabled veterans got around campus any way they could, sometimes hitching rides on service trucks, since sidewalks did not have accessible ramps for them to move from building to building. It was impossible to navigate a 6-inch curb in a wheelchair, and so veterans began to advocate for improved access. And so, in 1945, due to the work of a veteran named Jack Fisher, the first curb cut in America was installed in Kalamazoo, Michigan. Shout out to the Midwest, where brilliant things are always happening. The first curb cut was installed in Kalamazoo, Michigan to make public spaces more accessible. It was a big victory, and it was an isolated victory because it did not really catch on. So we need to fast forward now to the late 1960s to the Berkeley campus on California, where students with disabilities were living together in one of the very few dorm buildings that could accommodate them. And they found navigating the Berkeley campus in a wheelchair to be so challenging that the students would actually choose their classes based on which would be downhill from the class that came before. And they talked about this, of course, and they began to advocate, and they created what is called the independent living movement. Their goal was to create a wheelchair accessible path through Berkeley. And activism is generally a slow process, so sometimes they took matters into their own hands, employing guerrilla construction work in the middle of the night. Sometimes they would remove curbs with sledgehammers, and the city would have to try and repair the damage. Sometimes, lacking any workable ramps, they would pour their own ramps with concrete under cover of darkness. The police threatened to arrest them, but they never did. And finally, in 1972, as a result of all this activism and agitation, a proper curb cut was finally installed in Berkeley. So Angela Blackwell, in an article for the Stanford Social Innovation Review, which is called The Curb Cut Effect, she quotes one of the Berkeley activists who said it was the slab of concrete heard around the world. Because this one did catch on. And a 1968 law had already made basic accessibility a requirement for public buildings, and communities in general were becoming more aware of this issue because of the activism and the awareness raising of so many people and so many veterans. And so curb cuts began to spread all around communities. And then in 1990, the American with Disabilities Act made them mandatory. And along the way, Blackwell writes, something unexpected happened, which is that everybody began using them. Not only people in wheelchairs, Blackwell writes, parents pushing strollers headed straight for the curb cuts. So did workers pushing heavy carts, business travelers hauling luggage, even runners, and of course, skateboarders. A study of pedestrian behavior in Sarasota, Florida, revealed that 9 out of 10 pedestrians go out of their way to use a curb cut. And Blackwell, in her article, calls this the curb cut effect, which is a phrase now widely used to describe the simple principle that, that when spaces are made more accessible, everybody benefits. So let's look at some familiar examples. Closed captions are a great example. They were originally designed, of course, to assist people with hearing disabilities. Now they make it possible for Americans to watch British mystery shows on Netflix. Or if you're me, to watch Dairy Girls, which is an Irish comedy, and if you're not watching it, you should be watching it. And actually, closed captions have become a generational thing, right? I can always tell when our young adult-aged child has been watching the TV before me because the captions are turned on. 60% of Gen Zs and 50% of millennials automatically watch TV with the captions on. Voice to text. A text to voice, another example of a hugely convenient tool for everyone, not just for people who need accessibility support. It is now considered a basic accessibility feature of the modern digital age. Lisa Maria already mentioned fidgets in our Time for All Ages as something that is designed as a focus tool for children with ADHD originally, now very popular with the adults, which is not surprising. Adults have been doodling in meetings for as long as there have been meetings. The oldest existing Sumerian clay tablet is actually just a doodle of a cube, probably during a meeting about marketing strategies for next generation cigarettes. I made all of that up, but in fact there are examples of doodles on Sumerian clay tablets. You can look them up on the internet and see how people were doodling back in the day. So in 1985, a man named Ron Mace enumerated the 7 principles of what he called universal design. Mace had polio as a child, and he was frustrated by the inaccessibility of most spaces, and he wanted to make public spaces better for everyone. And his basic idea, his fundamental idea, was that we should design tools and spaces from the very beginning so that all people can use them, all people, design them with all people in mind right from the start so that all people can fully participate in the same space together. So here are some accessibility examples we owe to what is called the universal design movement. Automatic doors, automatic drinking fountains and sinks, levers as door handles instead of doorknobs, zero-step entrances to buildings, high-contrast text on websites and display screens, covered bus shelters, benches in public spaces for people to rest on, and also curb cuts, which were adopted as a feature of universal design. And the universal design movement is sometimes also called the lifespan design movement because it recognizes that we can all reasonably expect to have different needs and capabilities at different times in our life. Sometimes you've heard the phrase, we are all just temporarily able-bodied. Be that as it may, our capabilities are going to naturally change over the course of our life, so why not design our spaces with that in mind? When we design for the entire lifespan, everyone benefits. First Parish has always had a strong commitment to accessibility. In fact, you were the second congregation in the country to get certified as an accessible congregation by the UUA, which was definitely not lost on me when I was looking at congregations in search because it speaks to your values. And these days, when we think about accessibility, including here at First Parish, we're thinking more broadly than just physical accessibility needs. So take Zoom, for example, or pick a non-branded video conferencing software of your choice. Zoom obviously exploded during COVID when it was a godsend, keeping us connected. But Zoom is also an amazing accessibility tool that serves so many different kinds of accessibility needs. It creates accessibility for people who don't drive, for people who don't drive at night, or for people who have long commutes. It makes things accessible for people who don't have childcare or who don't have elder care. It makes things accessible for people who have physical conditions that make navigating spaces challenging or uncomfortable or impossible. But it's also a liberating tool for people who are neurodivergent, for whom navigating spaces built around neurotypical assumptions may also be challenging or uncomfortable or impossible. Also people who have social anxiety or PTSD, or people who have chemical sensitivities or who are immunocompromised, people who have hearing issues who need the captioning. Zoom is accessible across this vast range of issues. And sometimes after COVID, with so many of us feeling a little disconnected and a little Zoom fatigue, there's this push to get away from Zoom and to prioritize in-person gatherings. There's a desire to get everyone in the same room together again, but there are so many ways that Zoom makes connecting more accessible, that creating a high-quality Zoom experience for churches is actually an equity issue. It's a justice issue. You've been on the cutting edge of broadcasting and live streaming services for a long time, long before the pandemic, when most churches got on board, which is amazing. And we're continuing, and we're going to continue to make investments like purchasing an OWL camera and other things to make all church events as accessible as we can to live streaming, because it's good for everyone, and it's a justice issue. And here's one more example of how we're thinking about accessibility at First Parish. Starting next Sunday, we're going to open up a room upstairs to create a quieter space for socializing during coffee hour, 201. And this is something that can offer support for a variety of needs. Again, people who have sensory sensitivities, who need a calmer, quieter environment in which to regulate themselves, people who have hearing issues, people who have mobility issues or challenges standing for a prolonged time. Creating a quiet space for gathering is an accessibility issue, it's an equity issue, and it also benefits people who just like to connect sometimes in a quiet space. So additional gathering spaces will help alleviate crowding in the commons, and we're going to keep providing more of these different kinds of spaces as we experiment with what people need and want. And not everything we do is going to be a winner, so feedback is helpful. But in the end, we think everyone will benefit. So if there's something that you need or that you would like to see, please let us know. If there's a resource that would make your experience of church better, please let us know that too. So again, I think of accessibility broadly as an example of equity, a word that not everyone may be familiar with. Equity is best understood by distinguishing it from equality. When we're working from an equality principle, we're making sure that we are treating everyone the same way and giving everyone the same resources. Everyone has access to the same set of stairs. That's equality. When we're working from the equity principle, we are focused not on treating people the same, but on giving people access to the particular resources that they need, recognizing that people have different needs. Some people need a ramp or an elevator. Equity focuses less on providing everyone with equal resources, but rather wants everyone to be resourced equally. That each person alike should have an opportunity to flourish, to fully develop their unique gifts and talents, and to participate in the life of the community. And the curb cut effect suggests that when goals are made more attainable, everyone benefits. When human flourishing is supported and encouraged, everyone benefits. We all benefit from a world that is designed around equity. So this year, as you may recall, we are examining the proposed new covenant for Unitarian Universalist Association. expressed as 7 core values with associated commitments, replacing the existing 7 principles in the UUA's bylaws. That is the proposal. And we are taking these values one a month, one at a time, and asking, why is this core to Unitarian Universalism? Why should this be part of the new commitment that we want to make for how we're going to be together in the future? And this month, we're looking at the proposed value of equity, one of those 7 core values. And the new language reads, equity. We declare that every person has the right to flourish with inherent dignity and worthiness. We covenant to use our time, wisdom, attention, and money to build and sustain fully accessible and inclusive communities. That's a lot of words. We like our words. I'm going to read that one more time. Equity means we declare that every person has the right to flourish with inherent dignity and worthiness. We covenant to use our time, wisdom, attention, and money to build and sustain fully accessible and inclusive communities. And the thing that I find most interesting about this, and most appropriate about this, that the language of the first principle, which you're probably familiar with, affirming the inherent worth and dignity of each person, that language was re-embedded in this new framework under the heading of equity. And the reason I think this is interesting is because it speaks to the deep value that is at play here. Because so much of our society implicitly or often explicitly valorizes certain kinds of bodies. Mostly young bodies, certainly what are called able bodies, and valorizes certain kinds of neurological systems, those we call neurotypical. And ableism and ageism is rampant in our society. So we are all subject to this barrage of messages, implicitly or explicitly, that tie our worth to what we can do or what we can produce as isolated individuals, and what kind of bodies and capacities we have. And the equity principle calls us right back to our universalism and says, no, you don't have to prove your value. You don't have to justify the right of your body to take up space. You don't have to justify your right to be in community. Everyone needs everyone. And the goal is not to rise or fall as isolated individuals. It is to flourish as a community where everyone has a place and everyone is valued. And the consumerist mindset and the ableist mindset sees each person as a potential burden to the community, right? As a potential drain on resources. So people must demonstrate that they can pay their way or earn their way, or else they become an object of paternalistic charity or accommodation. Equity says each person is a gift. Each person is a gift. Equity is firmly convinced of the amazingness of humans, and that we benefit each other and our communities in all kinds of subtle and surprising and delightful ways when we are allowed to flourish. Equity design then affirms the value of each person in the most practical and even intimate way, because a space that is designed around equity says, we want you here. And it says implicitly, we built this space with you in mind. We were thinking of you when we did this, because we want you here. And a community organized around equity says, we value your presence, we honor your gifts, and we want you to flourish. And so the Reverend Julian Soto, themselves a disability rights activist, writes in our poem, to be free, you must know that inside you are entire universes, milky blue, magenta, and gold expanding. But to actually be free, you must know and you must fight for the entire universes inside of everyone else. So as we think about the spaces that we want to create for each other, here at First Parish, in our workplaces, in our community, what would it look like if we centered ourselves around equity as a core value? Can we receive one another as gifts? Each of us unique and irreplaceable, with inherent worth and dignity. Can we honor the universe of creativity within ourselves and within everyone else? What would a world look like if it were designed that we could all flourish together? Imagine if we could make it so. Blessed be, and amen. Our closing hymn today is number 298, Wake Now My Senses. Please rise in body or spirit. Our closing words today are adapted from Laurelyn Bellamy. If here you have found freedom, take it with you into the world. If you have found comfort, go and share it with others. If you have dreamed dreams, help one another that they may come true. If you have known love, give some back to a world that so needs love. Go in peace.